The morning sun burned red over the scrapyard, casting long shadows across mountains of twisted metal and broken machines. Daehyun Park wiped sweat from his forehead and squinted at the rusted landscape before him. At 67 years old, his hands still knew how to work, even if his back complained about it every morning. He pushed his small cargo cart deeper into the restricted zone, past warning signs that had faded to nothing over the decades. Nobody came here anymore. The war had been over for 40 years, and most people wanted to forget it ever happened. But Daehyun couldn't forget. The war lived in his bones, in his dreams, in the empty space beside him where Mi-sun used to sleep. The scrapyard spread out for miles, filled with the corpses of war machines, tanks with their cannons bent and broken, transport ships that would never fly again, and mechs, dozens of mechs, standing like metal giants frozen in their final moments. Some were missing arms. Others had holes the size of cars punched through their chest plates. All of them were silent now. Daehyun had come looking for hydraulic parts for a farmer's broken tractor. Simple work, quiet work. The kind of work that didn't require him to think about the past. He made his living fixing agricultural equipment now, and that was fine with him. The farmers paid in cash or vegetables, and nobody asked him about the war. But something caught his eye as he walked past a collapsed storage building, a glint of metal, different from the rust-brown everything else. He stopped and turned his head. There, half buried under concrete slabs and steel beams, was the arm of a mech. Not just any mech. A Mark 7 Sentinel. His breath caught in his throat. He had piloted a Mark 7 during the war. The same model. The same design. His hands remembered. The controls. The way the neural interface felt when it connected to his mind. He remembered the power of moving a 15-meter war machine as if it were his own body. Daehyun set down his cart and walked closer. He shouldn't. He knew he shouldn't. But his feet carried him forward anyway. He climbed over the debris, his old muscles protesting with each movement. When he finally reached the buried mech, he brushed away dirt and rust with his hand. The paint was gone. The armor was pitted with corrosion. But underneath all that damage, he could see the frame was intact. More intact than it had any right to be after 40 years of abandonment. His fingers traced the manufacturer's marks on the arm plating. Unit number 773. Built in 2143. That made it one of the later models, constructed near the end of the war. "What are you doing here?" a voice called out. Daehyun turned to see Officer Kyung-mi Han standing on top of a wrecked transport, her uniform sharp against the rust and ruin. She was young, maybe 30, with the kind of stern expression that came from trying to enforce rules nobody cared about anymore. "Salvaging parts," Daehyun said. It wasn't a lie. Not completely. "This is the restricted zone," Kyung-mi said, climbing down carefully. "You need authorization to be here." "I've been coming here for 15 years, Daehyun replied. "Nobody ever cared before." Kyung-mi reached the ground and walked toward him. Her hand rested on her sidearm, but Daehyun didn't think she would use it. "That's military property. Everything in this section belongs to the government. If you want parts, go to the civilian zone." Daehyun looked back at the buried mech. "This thing has been rotting here for decades. Nobody wants it." "Doesn't matter," Kyung-mi said. She was close enough now that he could see her face more clearly. There was something in her eyes. Not just duty, but curiosity. "You're Daehyun Park, aren't you? The Iron Ghost." He flinched at the name. Nobody had called him that in years. The Iron Ghost. That's what the Wrath had called him during the war, after his unit had held the line at the Taishan Valley for 3 weeks against impossible odds. After he had walked his damaged mech through enemy fire to pull 2 other pilots from their burning machines. After he had become something more than human, something closer to the metal he piloted. "That was a long time ago," Daehyun said quietly. Kyung-mi nodded. "My father served under you. He said you were the best pilot he ever saw. Said you could make a mech dance." "Your father?" Daehyun searched his memory. There had been so many faces, so many young soldiers who never came home. "He didn't make it back," Kyung-mi said, "but he talked about you in his letters. before the end. The silence stretched between them. Around them, the scrapyard creaked and groaned in the wind. Dae-hyun turned back to look at the buried Mark 7. In his mind, he could see it moving, walking, fighting. He could feel the neural connection, the way thought became action, the way man and machine merged into something greater. "I want to restore it," he heard himself say. Kyung-mi raised an eyebrow. "That's impossible. These things are dead. The neural cores are fried. The power systems are shot. Even if you could get it running, the military would never allow a civilian to own a combat mech." "I'm not a civilian," Dae-hyun said. "I was never officially discharged. Medical leave, not retirement. Check your records." Kyung-mi pulled out her tablet and tapped at it for a moment. Her eyes widened slightly. "You're still listed as active reserve. How is that possible?" "Bureaucracy," Dae-hyun said with a thin smile. "Nobody ever processed the paperwork. I was supposed to report for a medical review 30 years ago, but by then everyone had forgotten about us old pilots." "This is crazy," Kyung-mi said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "You're talking about excavating tons of debris, rebuilding systems that haven't existed in decades, and somehow bringing a dead war machine back to life. Why?" Dae-hyun didn't have a good answer. Or maybe he did, but it wasn't one he could explain. He looked at the mech and saw all the things he had lost. His purpose. His brothers and sisters in arms. Mi-sun, who had waited for him through every deployment, who had held him when the nightmares came, who had understood the weight he carried. "Because it's still worth saving," he finally said. Kyung-mi studied him for a long moment. Then she sighed and put away her tablet. "I'll file a report saying the restricted zone is clear. What you do with your time is your business. But if this causes problems, I never had this conversation." "Understood?" Dae-hyun nodded. "Understood." Kyung-mi turned to leave, then stopped. "My father's name was Won-shik. He was a gunner on a Mark 5. He said you saved his life twice." "Won-shik," Dae-hyun repeated. The name stirred something in his memory. A young man with quick hands and quicker laugh. "I remember him. He was good." "He was," Kyung-mi said softly. Then she walked away, leaving Dae-hyun alone with the buried mech. Dae-hyun stood there as the sun climbed higher, painting the scrapyard in shades of gold and rust. He thought about Mi-sun, about the promise he had made to her before she died. "Live," she had said. "Don't just exist. Live." Maybe this was living. Maybe bringing something dead back to life was the only way he knew how to move forward. He returned to his cart and headed back to his workshop. Tomorrow he would return with proper equipment. Tomorrow he would begin the work of excavation and restoration. Tomorrow he would start remembering how to be a pilot again. The mech waited in the darkness beneath the rubble, silent and still, holding secrets that Dae-hyun could not yet imagine. 3 weeks had passed since Dae-hyun found the buried Mark 7. 3 weeks of backbreaking work, clearing debris one piece at a time. His workshop was now filled with parts and tools he hadn't touched in decades. The smell of machine oil and welding sparks had replaced the quiet dust of his retirement. The mech lay on its side in the cleared space behind his workshop, taking up almost his entire yard. It looked worse in full daylight. Rust had eaten through the outer armor in several places. The left leg was crumpled below the knee. The cockpit hatch was sealed shut, probably fused by heat damage. But the more Dae-hyun examined it, the more he realized something remarkable. The frame was solid. The neural core housing appeared intact. This machine could be saved. He worked alone most days, but today was different. A young man stood at the edge of his property, watching with wide eyes. Dae-hyun had noticed him 3 times this week, always watching, never approaching. Finally, Dae-hyun set down his welding torch and waved him over. The young man hesitated, then walked forward. He was maybe 25, with oil stains on his clothes and the kind of lean build that came from physical work. "I'm Tae-yang," he said. "I work at the machine shop in town. I heard you were restoring a war mech." "News travels fast," Dae-hyun said. "Can I help?" Tae-yang asked. His eyes were bright with excitement. "I've read everything about the Mark 7 Sentinel. I know the systems. The hydraulics. The power distribution. I've studied the schematics since I was a kid. Please, I'll work for free. Dae-hyun almost said no. He had gotten used to working alone, to the silence and solitude. But looking at Tae-young's eager face reminded him of himself 40 years ago, when he first enlisted and saw his first mech. That same wonder. That same hunger to be part of something greater. Can you fabricate parts? Dae-hyun asked. Yes, sir. I can work with any metal. I have access to a forge and machining equipment. Then you're hired, Dae-hyun said. But we work my way. Slow and careful. This isn't a race. Tae-young's grin could have lit up the whole scrapyard. The work became easier with 2 sets of hands. Tae-young was quick and skilled, and he asked good questions. Together they stripped away the damaged outer armor and began assessing the internal systems. The hydraulic lines needed complete replacement. The power core was dead but not destroyed. The weapon mounts were empty, which was good since Dae-hyun had no intention of arming the machine. But the real challenge was the neural interface. This was the heart of any combat mech, the system that let a pilot's mind connect directly to the machine. It required delicate work with circuits that were almost organic in their complexity. Dae-hyun had trained for 2 years just to understand these systems during the war. The neural core should be completely fried, Tae-young said one afternoon, peering into the exposed interface chamber. But look at this. The biosynthetic channels are still intact. I don't understand how that's possible. Dae-hyun leaned in to look. Tae-young was right. The neural core glowed faintly with residual power, even after 4 decades without maintenance. The crystalline structures that stored neural patterns were cloudy, but unbroken. This was impossible. These systems degraded within years without power, yet here they were, somehow preserved. Maybe the shielding held, Dae-hyun said, though he didn't believe it. Maybe, Tae-young said, but his voice was doubtful too. They worked through the spring and into early summer. The mech slowly transformed from a rust-covered corpse into something that almost looked alive again. Dae-hyun rebuilt the power core using modern fusion cells. Tae-young fabricated new hydraulic lines and armor plates. They worked 12-hour days, sometimes longer. Dae-hyun's old body complained, but his mind felt sharper than it had in years. Officer Kyung-mi stopped by occasionally to check on their progress. She never interfered, but Dae-hyun could see the concern in her eyes. You know people are talking, she said one evening. Some folks are nervous about a combat mech being restored. They remember the war. It won't have weapons, Dae-hyun assured her. This is just restoration. Preservation of history. History has a way of repeating itself, Kyung-mi said, but she didn't push the issue. Finally, after 8 weeks of work, they were ready for the first power test. Dae-hyun had rewired every major system, replaced every damaged component, and restored the neural interface to working condition, or as close as he could get without actually testing it. Are you sure about this? Tae-young asked. He stood beside the mech's head, his hand on the power coupling. If the neural core is damaged, it could feed back into your mind. I've read about pilots who got brain damage from bad connections. I've done this 100 times, Dae-hyun said, though his hands trembled slightly as he climbed the ladder to the cockpit. The truth was, he hadn't done this in 40 years. His body remembered, but bodies could lie. The cockpit was cramped, designed for a younger man. Dae-hyun squeezed into the pilot's seat and pulled the neural interface crown down over his head. The contact points pressed against his temples and the base of his skull. Cold, familiar, terrifying. Starting the power sequence, Tae-young called from below. The mech hummed to life. Systems began initializing one by one. Hydraulics, check. Power distribution, check. Sensor arrays, check. Everything was working. Everything was perfect. Maybe too perfect. Then came the neural interface activation. Dae-hyun felt the connection establish, that strange sensation of his consciousness expanding beyond his body. For a moment, he was 15 meters tall, made of metal and power. He could feel the mech's systems as if they were his own limbs. The weight of the armor, the strength in the hydraulic joints, the flow of power through artificial muscles. But something else was there too. Another presence in the neural link. Not hostile, not foreign, familiar in a way that made his heart stop. The mech's speakers crackled to life. A voice emerged, synthesized but distinctly feminine, speaking in Korean with an accent he knew better than his own. Hello, Dae-hyun. Ice Systems Online. Dae-hyun's hands went numb. The world seemed to tilt sideways. That voice. That name, Misun, his wife's name. His dead wife's name, what? He whispered. What did you say? Neural interface established, the voice continued. Pilot identity confirmed. Daehyun Park, welcome back. This isn't possible, Daehyun said. His voice was shaking. I never programmed that name. I never put her name in any system. How do you know that name? I have always known it, the voice said. There was something strange in the tone. Not quite emotion, but something close to it. I know many things about you, Daehyun. Would you like me to list them? No, Daehyun said quickly. Then yes, tell me something. Something only Misun would know. There was a pause. Then the voice spoke again, softer this time. You promised her you would plant cherry trees in the garden. You never did. She forgave you before she died. But it still makes you sad every spring when the cherry blossoms bloom. Daehyun felt tears running down his face. Nobody knew that. Nobody. It was a conversation they had shared alone in the hospital 3 days before Misun died. A small thing. A forgotten promise. How could a machine know that? What are you? He asked. I am not sure, the voice admitted. My memories are fragmented, like waking from a long sleep. But I remember you. I remember loving you. I remember wanting to help you. Taeyang, Daehyun shouted. Shut it down. Shut down the power now. What, why? Taeyang called back. Just do it. The power died. The neural connection severed. Daehyun sat in the dark cockpit, breathing hard, his mind racing. This was impossible. Mechs didn't have memories like this. They didn't speak in voices of the dead. They didn't know things that only two people had ever shared. He climbed down from the cockpit on shaking legs. Taeyang rushed over, his face full of concern. What happened? Did the interface malfunction? Something worse, Daehyun said. It worked perfectly. That night, Daehyun sat alone in his workshop staring at the mech through the window. His mind kept returning to that voice. Misun's voice, speaking from metal and circuits, saying things only she should know. There were only two possibilities. Either he was losing his mind or something impossible had happened during the war. Something involving his wife. Something involving neural technology and human consciousness. Either way, he needed answers, and the only place to find them was deeper in the connection with the machine that spoke with his dead wife's voice. Daehyun didn't sleep that night. He sat at his desk with old files and faded photographs spread before him. Pictures of Misun, letters from the war years, medical records from her final days. He was looking for something, anything that might explain what the mech knew. Misun had died 15 years ago from radiation sickness. She had been a medical volunteer during the war, treating wounded soldiers in field hospitals near the front lines. The exposure had been slow but deadly. By the time the doctors caught it, the damage was already done. She had lived for 12 years after the war ended, growing weaker each year until her body finally gave up. But that was the official story. The story Daehyun had told himself for 15 years. Now he wondered if there was more. Something Misun had never told him. Something hidden in classified files and military secrets. When morning came, Taeyang arrived to find Daehyun surrounded by papers, his eyes red from exhaustion. You look terrible, Taeyang said. We need to access military records, Daehyun said without greeting. Classified files from the war. Can you do that? Taeyang frowned. That's illegal and dangerous. Why would we need classified files? Daehyun told him about the voice, about Misun's name, about the things the mech knew. Taeyang listened with growing disbelief. That's not possible, Taeyang said when Daehyun finished. Neural interfaces don't work like that. They read brain patterns and translate them into machine commands. They don't store memories or personalities. I know what I heard, Daehyun said, and I know what it knew. Things that died with Misun. Taeyang was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his tablet. I have a friend. Works in the Colonial Archives. He owes me a favor. Let me see what I can find. While Taeyang worked his contacts, Daehyun returned to the mech. He climbed into the cockpit again, his heart pounding. The neural crown felt heavier this time, weighted with fear and hope. He powered up the system slowly, methodically. When the neural interface activated, he was ready for the voice. Hello again, Daehyun, the Misun voice said. You seem troubled. I want answers, Daehyun said. How do you know the things you know? How do you speak with her voice? I am not certain, the voice said. There was something sad in it now. My memories are incomplete. But I remember being her. I remember loving you. I remember choosing this. Choosing what? To help you fight. To give you strength when you needed it most. To be your shield and your sword. Daehyun's chest tightened. Mi-sun would never volunteer for military service. She hated the war. She hated what it did to people. She did not volunteer to fight, the voice said quietly. She volunteered to be remembered. Before Daehyun could respond, Tae-yang came running into the yard waving his tablet. I found something. You need to see this. Daehyun disconnected from the neural interface and climbed down. Tae-yang showed him the screen. It was an old military document, heavily redacted but still readable in places. The header said Project Resonance. What is this? Daehyun asked. A classified program from the war, Tae-yang said, scrolling through the document. It says they were experimenting with neural imprinting. They wanted to improve pilot performance by creating AI patterns based on emotional connections. They scanned the neural patterns of pilots' loved ones and tried to integrate them into mech systems. Daehyun felt cold. Why would they do that? To make pilots fight harder, Tae-yang said grimly. The psychological report said pilots performed better when they felt they were protecting someone specific. Someone they loved. So the military tried to create that artificially. That's insane, Daehyun said. That's using people's emotions as weapons. It gets worse, Tae-yang said. He scrolled to another section. The project was shut down after 6 months. There were ethical violations, mental breakdowns among pilots. Some of the subjects died during the scanning process. But look at this date. The project ended 3 months before your final deployment. Daehyun looked at the date. His hands shook. That was when Mi-sun was in the hospital, when her radiation sickness was getting worse, when she had asked him not to visit for a week because she needed some tests done. She was part of this, Daehyun whispered. She volunteered for this. Tae-yang nodded. There's a partial list of participants. Her name is there. Mi-sun Park, volunteer subject. Neural scan completed. Status, successful integration. Daehyun sat down heavily on a nearby crate. His mind was reeling. Mi-sun had let them scan her brain, copy her neural patterns, turn her thoughts and feelings into data. All while she was dying, all while he was away fighting. Why didn't she tell me? He asked, though he wasn't sure if he was asking Tae-yang or the universe. Maybe she couldn't, Tae-yang said gently. It was classified. Or maybe she didn't want you to worry. She was dying anyway. Maybe this was her way of staying with you. Daehyun stood and walked back to the mech. He placed his hand on the cold metal of its leg. Inside this machine was an echo of Mi-sun. Not her soul. Not her living mind. But something like her. A pattern that remembered love. A ghost in the machine. Are you going to talk to it again? Tae-yang asked. Yes, Daehyun said. I need to understand. Over the next week, Daehyun spent hours in the cockpit connected to the neural interface talking with the Mi-sun AI. It was not his wife. He understood that, but it was something that came from her. Something she had given willingly. And slowly, piece by piece, the AI's fragmented memories became clearer. The AI explained that it was born from Mi-sun's neural scan combined with standard combat programming. It had her warmth and her way of seeing the world, but also tactical analysis and combat readiness. It was designed to make pilots fight better by giving them something to protect, something that felt real. I was supposed to be assigned to your mech, the AI said during one session. Mi-sun requested it specifically, but the project was canceled before deployment. I was stored in this unit and forgotten. Until you found me. Do you have her memories? Daehyun asked. Do you remember our life together? Some, the AI said. I remember the first time you met. A medical tent during a supply run. You had shrapnel in your shoulder and refused treatment until everyone else was seen first. She said you were the most stubborn man she ever met. She loved you for it. Daehyun smiled despite himself. That sounded like Mi-sun. I remember your wedding, the AI continued. Small ceremony. Just 12 people. You wore your dress uniform. She wore a simple white dress. You promised to grow old together, to plant cherry trees, to see the stars together after the war. We didn't get to do those things, Daehyun said quietly. No, the AI agreed. But she did not regret loving you. That is the strongest memory I have. No regrets, only love. Daehyun disconnected from the interface and sat in the cockpit for a long time. Outside the sun was setting, painting the sky in colors Mi-sun had loved. Red and gold and purple, the colors of hope. Tae-yang found him there an hour later. Are you okay? I don't know, Daehyun admitted. Is this wrong? Talking to an AI that sounds like my dead wife? Am I dishonoring her memory? Taeyang climbed up and sat on the cockpit edge. I don't think so. She gave this gift willingly. She wanted to help you. Maybe using it honors her more than letting it rust away. Maybe, Daehyun said. That night, Officer Kyung-mi arrived with news that changed everything. We have a problem, she said. A man from military intelligence was asking about you today. Agent Hyun-woo. He wants to inspect your mech. He says it might contain classified materials. When? Taehyun asked. Tomorrow morning. I tried to delay him, but he has authorization from the colonial governor. Daehyun looked at the mech, standing tall and almost complete in his yard. Inside it was Mi-sun's ghost. Her final gift, her way of staying with him through the darkness. They're going to take it apart, Daehyun said. They're going to erase her. Maybe not, Kyung-mi said. Maybe they just want to verify it's safe. But Daehyun knew better. The military didn't leave loose ends. Project Resonance was a scandal waiting to happen. If they discovered that this mech contained neural patterns from a civilian volunteer, they would destroy the evidence. They would erase Mi-sun all over again. He looked at Taeyang, then at Kyung-mi. I need time. Just a little more time to finish the restoration. To understand what she wanted me to know. Kyung-mi sighed. I can give you until tomorrow evening. After that, I can't protect you. That's enough, Daehyun said, though he wasn't sure if he believed it. As Kyung-mi left, Daehyun turned back to the mech. Tomorrow he would have to face government agents and questions he couldn't answer. But tonight he would finish what Mi-sun had started. Tonight he would complete the connection. Tonight he would truly understand what his wife had sacrificed to stay by his side. Agent Hyun-woo arrived exactly at dawn, dressed in a dark suit that looked too clean for the dusty scrapyard. He was young, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Two armed soldiers stood behind him, their weapons held ready but not raised. A show of force that was also a threat. Mr. Park, Hyun-woo said, not bothering with pleasantries. I am here to inspect your restoration project. For security purposes. Security purposes, Daehyun repeated. He stood between Hyun-woo and the mech, his arms crossed. Behind him, Taeyang watched nervously from the workshop door. This machine has been dead for 40 years. What security threat could it possibly pose? That is what I am here to determine, Hyun-woo said. He pulled out a tablet and began typing. This unit was reported as destroyed in combat. Yet here it stands, mostly functional. That raises questions. It was buried and forgotten, Daehyun said. I dug it up and restored it. There's no mystery. Hyun-woo looked up from his tablet. The mystery, Mr. Park, is the neural interface. Our sensors detected an active AI signature during our preliminary scan. Combat mechs should not have active AI. They are controlled by human pilots through neural interface. So either you have modified this machine in ways that violate multiple treaties, or something unusual is happening. Which is it? Before Daehyun could answer, alarms began screaming across the colony. Not the normal warning systems. The emergency sirens. The ones that had not sounded since the war ended. Everyone froze, looking up at the sky as if they could see the threat through the clouds. Hyun-woo's radio crackled to life. A panicked voice spoke rapidly in military code. Daehyun's war-trained mind translated automatically. Unidentified ships, multiple contacts, approaching fast. Not human signatures, Vrath, Hyun-woo whispered. His face went pale. He touched his radio. Confirm contact. Are they broadcasting peaceful intent? The voice on the radio responded. Negative. Weapons hot. Estimated arrival in 3 hours. The Vrath, humanity's enemy during the war. The aliens who had pushed into human space 40 years ago, trying to claim colony worlds for themselves. The war had ended with a treaty, but it had been a cold peace. The Vrath retreated to their own territory. Humanity rebuilt. Both sides watched each other across the void, waiting. Apparently the waiting was over. How many ships? Hyun-woo demanded into his radio. 12 confirmed. Maybe more behind them. It's a full war fleet, sir. Hyun-woo cursed. He looked at his soldiers, then at Daehyun, then at the mech. His mind was clearly calculating odds and finding them all bad. What defenses does this colony have? 2 orbital defense platforms, one of the soldiers said. Both operating at 40% capacity. We have 6 atmospheric fighters, 4 of them functional. We have small arms and anti-aircraft weapons. That's it. Most of our military assets were relocated to the core worlds 10 years ago. So we're defenseless, Hyun-woo said flatly. Against a war fleet? Yes, sir, we are defenseless. Dae-hyun felt something cold settle in his stomach. He knew what a Wrath war fleet could do. He had fought them for 3 years. Their weapons could burn cities from orbit. Their soldiers were ruthless and efficient. If they were here for vengeance, the colony didn't stand a chance. We need to evacuate, Hyun-woo said. He was already typing evacuation orders into his tablet. Get everyone to the underground shelters. Contact the nearest military outpost. Request immediate reinforcement. Reinforcements are 3 weeks away, the soldier said quietly. Hyun-woo stopped typing. 3 weeks. The colony would be ash in 3 days. Then we need to buy time, Hyun-woo said. He looked at Dae-hyun with new eyes. Not a civilian to be questioned. A resource to be used. Can you pilot that mech? Yes, Dae-hyun said without hesitation. And the neural interface? Is it functional? Yes, but there's something you should know about the AI. I don't care about the AI, Hyun-woo interrupted. I care about whether you can fight. Can you fight? Dae-hyun thought about Mi-sun. About the voice inside the mech. About the promise he had made to live, not just exist. He had spent 40 years running from the war. Maybe it was time to stop running. Yes, he said. I can fight. Good, Hyun-woo said. Because I am drafting you back into active service. Emergency conscription. As of this moment, you are a combat pilot again. Understood? Understood, Dae-hyun said. The word tasted like metal and old blood. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Taeyang worked frantically to complete the mech's final systems. They had no weapons, so Taeyang fabricated crude plasma cutters from industrial equipment and mounted them on the mech's arms. Not military grade, but better than nothing. Kyungmi organized the civilian evacuation while Hyun-woo coordinated with the orbital defense platforms. The colony's few other pilots were assembled. There were 4 of them. All young, all trained on simulators but never tested in real combat. They looked at their atmospheric fighters with fear in their eyes. They knew those fighters would not be enough. Dae-hyun stood beside his mech and looked at the young pilots. They reminded him of Won-shik and all the others who had not come home. Too young, too hopeful, too unprepared for what was coming. Listen to me, Dae-hyun said. His voice carried the weight of 3 years of combat. The Wrath fight with honor. They respect strength and courage. If you show fear, they will destroy you. If you show strength, they will test you. And if you fight with everything you have, they will remember you. We're going to die, aren't we? One of the pilots asked, a young woman with tears in her eyes. Maybe, Dae-hyun said honestly, but we're going to make them pay for every meter of ground. We're going to make them remember why humans don't surrender. We're going to show them that 40 years of peace didn't make us soft. We're going to show them what happens when you attack our homes. Are you with me? The pilots nodded. The tears were still there, but so was something else now. Something harder. Something that looked like determination. Dae-hyun climbed into his mech's cockpit for what might be the last time. The neural crown settled onto his head. He powered up the systems and felt the familiar connection establish. Man and machine. Thought and action. Past and present merging together. Hello, Dae-hyun, the Mi-sun voice said. I have been monitoring the situation. The Wrath are here for vengeance. This colony was the staging ground for the Taishan Valley campaign. They have not forgotten what happened there. What you did there. Then they're here for me, Dae-hyun said. No, the AI said. They are here to reclaim their honor. You are just the symbol they chose to destroy. But symbols can be powerful things. Are you ready to fight again? Dae-hyun looked out through the mech's visual sensors. He could see the town in the distance. Thousands of civilians streaming toward the shelters. Children who had never known war. Families who thought the fighting was over. All of them depending on a handful of pilots and one old man in a restored mech. Mi-sun, he said quietly. If we do this, the neural interface will be pushed to its limits. The connection might damage the AI core. I might lose you again. You never lost me, the AI said. Its voice was warm, so much like Mi-sun that his heart ached. I have been here all along, waiting for you to need me, and now you do. So let us fight together one last time. Let me be your shield and your sword. Let me protect the life we never got to live. Dae-hyun's hands moved across the controls. The mech stood up, its joints moving smoothly after weeks of restoration. 15 meters of steel and power, a relic of a war that should have stayed buried. Now humanity's last line of defense. Then let's show them what humans can do, Daehyun said. Let's show them why they feared us. The neural connection deepened. Daehyun felt Misun's presence flowing through his mind, not controlling but supporting, not commanding but guiding. Two consciousnesses moving as one, pilot and AI, husband and wife, human and machine. Above them, the Vrath fleet entered orbit. 12 warships, each one capable of destroying a city. They broadcast no warnings. They requested no surrender. They simply began their attack. The orbital defense platforms opened fire. Plasma beams lanced upward, striking shields and armor. The Vrath returned fire. One platform exploded in a ball of light. The other began to fail, its shields collapsing under sustained bombardment. All pilots, launch! Hyunwoo's voice commanded over the radio. Engage at will. Make them bleed! The atmospheric fighters took off. 4 small specks against the massive Vrath warships. They fired missiles and cannons, doing little damage but drawing attention. The Vrath ships responded, their point defense systems tracking the fighters with deadly precision. And below it all, walking out from the scrapyard toward the town, Daehyun piloted his restored mech. The Iron Ghost walked again. The Vrath would remember this day. The war had returned. And this time, Daehyun had something worth fighting for. Not orders from distant commanders. Not abstract ideas of duty and honor, but the memory of a woman who loved him enough to become part of a machine. The memory of a promise to protect those who could not protect themselves. The first Vrath dropships began descending through the atmosphere, trailing fire. Hundreds of enemy soldiers coming to claim the colony, coming to destroy everything humanity had built here. Ready? The Misun AI asked. Ready, Daehyun confirmed. The mech's improvised weapons powered up, its sensors locked onto the nearest dropship. And Daehyun smiled, cold and hard and ready. Let them come. The first Vrath dropship crashed into the open field outside the colony with enough force to shake the ground. Its doors blasted open and soldiers poured out, tall and armored, carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. They moved in perfect formation, professional and efficient. Daehyun met them head-on. The mech moved faster than something so large had any right to move. The neural connection was perfect, stronger than anything Daehyun had experienced during the war. Every thought became instant action. Every instinct translated into 15 meters of metal responding like it was his own body. And underneath it all, he felt Misun's presence, guiding and supporting, turning his movements from good to extraordinary. The improvised plasma cutters were not elegant weapons, but they were effective. Daehyun swept through the Vrath formation, cutting through their armor and shields. The aliens scattered, trying to establish defensive positions, but Daehyun didn't give them time. He had fought the Vrath for 3 years. He knew their tactics. He knew how they thought. Second dropship incoming, the Misun AI warned. Northeast vector. 30 seconds. Daehyun turned the mech and ran. Each step covered 10 meters. He reached the landing zone just as the second dropship touched down. He drove the plasma cutter straight into its engine core before the doors could open. The ship exploded, taking its entire cargo of soldiers with it. Above, the 4 atmospheric fighters were fighting desperately against Vrath interceptors. They were outmatched and outgunned, but they were holding their own through pure determination. One fighter went down, its pilot ejecting at the last second. Another took heavy damage but kept flying, its weapons still firing even as smoke poured from its engines. Daehyun, Yanwoo's voice crackled over the radio. The second defense platform is down. They have orbital superiority. They're going to start bombing the colony. Then we make them pay attention to us instead, Daehyun said. He switched to the Vrath military frequency, using codes that were 40 years old but apparently still valid. This is the Iron Ghost. I know you remember me. I know you came here looking for me. Well, here I am. Come and take your revenge if you can. There was silence on the channel. Then a response came, deep and resonant in the Vrath language. Daehyun's translator implant converted it automatically. The ghost of Taishan Valley. We did not believe the reports. We thought you were dead. I got better, Daehyun said. Are you brave enough to face me? Or do you only fight the defenseless? Another pause. The Vrath valued honor above all things. A direct challenge could not be ignored without losing face. Finally, the voice responded. We will send warriors worthy of your reputation. Die well, Ghost. 3 more dropships descended, but these were different. Heavier armor, better weapons, and when the doors opened, What emerged were not standard infantry but Vrath combat mechs, smaller than Daehyun's Mark 7, but faster and equipped with actual military weapons, not improvised tools. Real instruments of war. 3 enemy mechs, the Mi-Sun AI reported. Weapons analysis complete. They have plasma cannons, missile pods, and energy shields. We have plasma cutters and hope. Tactical assessment. This will be difficult. When has anything worth doing been easy? Daehyun said. He charged forward to meet them. The neural connection deepened further. Daehyun no longer thought about controlling the mech. He simply moved and the machine responded. It was like the old days during the worst battles of the war, when pilots and machines became one thing, neither fully human nor fully mechanical, but something greater than both. The first Vrath mech opened fire with its plasma cannon. Daehyun dodged, the movement so smooth it seemed choreographed. He closed the distance and engaged in close combat, where his plasma cutters were most effective. The Vrath pilot was skilled, but Daehyun had decades of experience. He found the weak point in the enemy mech's armor and drove his weapon home. The second and third enemy mechs attacked together, coordinating their fire. Daehyun took hits. His shields flared and failed. Armor plating cracked and melted. Warning lights lit up across his display. The mech was taking damage faster than it could compensate. Shields at 15%, the Mi-Sun AI said. Hull integrity compromised. Left arm actuators failing. Recommendation, retreat and regroup. No, Daehyun said through gritted teeth. We hold this line. Then we need to try something dangerous. The full neural synchronization. Complete merger of consciousness. It will multiply our combat effectiveness, but it could destroy the AI core. It could destroy me. Daehyun hesitated for only a second. Do it. The neural connection exploded into something beyond what he had ever experienced. For a moment, Daehyun couldn't tell where he ended and Mi-Sun began. He felt her love and determination flowing through every circuit. He felt her courage and her warmth. He felt her presence not as an echo or a copy, but as something real and alive and fighting beside him. The mech moved like lightning. Daehyun destroyed the second Vrath mech with a combination of moves that should have been impossible. The third mech managed to land a solid hit with its missiles, blowing off the Mark 7's left arm entirely. But Daehyun barely felt it. He closed the distance and finished the fight with ruthless efficiency. 3 enemy mechs down. But more were coming. Always more coming. The battle raged for hours. Daehyun fought in the streets of the colony, in the fields beyond, in the scrapyard where he had found the mech. He fought until his body screamed with exhaustion and the mech's systems were barely functional. The young pilots and their fighters provided cover and support, their courage growing with every passing minute. Civilians emerged from shelters to throw rocks and fire hunting rifles at enemy infantry. The entire colony had become a battlefield, and through it all, Daehyun felt Mi-Sun with him, supporting him, protecting him, loving him, but the cost was mounting. The neural core was overheating. The AI's responses were becoming slower, fragmented. Daehyun could feel Mi-Sun's presence fading, burning away under the strain of full synchronization. The flagship, the Mi-Sun AI said, her voice distant now, in orbit. It's preparing to fire the main weapon. They're going to destroy the entire colony from space. Can we stop it? Daehyun asked, only one way. A fighter can't reach it, but a mech with jump jets could make a short orbital hop, just enough to reach the flagship and damage its reactor. The explosion would destroy the ship. And the mech, Daehyun said quietly. And the mech, Mi-Sun confirmed. And the AI core. This is goodbye, Daehyun. No, Daehyun said. I just got you back. I can't lose you again. You never lost me, Mi-Sun said. Her voice was warm even as it faded. I have been with you always. In your memories. In your heart. This AI is just one more memory. Let me be a good one. Let me save the people we love. Let me finish what I started all those years ago. Daehyun felt tears streaming down his face. I don't want to let you go. Then don't. Keep me here. She touched where his heart would be if she had hands. Keep me in the way you live. In the kindness you show. In the cherry trees you will finally plant. That's how I survive. Not in circuits and code, but in you. I love you, Daehyun whispered. I know, Mi-Sun said. I have always known. Now fly, my love. One last time. Show them what happens when humans fight for their homes. Daehyun activated the jump jets. They were barely functional, cobbled together from salvaged parts. But they worked. The mech launched upward, climbing through the atmosphere on pillars of flame. The Vrath flagship loomed above, massive and dark against the stars. The flagship's point defense systems opened fire. Daehyun flew through the barrage, the mech's armor ablating away under the assault. He crashed into the flagship's hull and drove his remaining plasma cutter deep into the armor, cutting his way inside. He could feel Misun's presence growing weaker with each second, her consciousness fragmenting as the AI core reached its limits. "Thank you," Daehyun said, "for everything. For loving me. For staying with me. For being my strength when I had none." "Thank you," Misun replied, her voice barely a whisper now. "For the life we had. For the promises we made. For the love we shared. Now live, Daehyun. Live the life we couldn't. Plant those cherry trees. Watch them bloom. And remember me in the spring." Daehyun reached the reactor core and overloaded it. The fusion reaction went critical, building toward catastrophic failure. He had maybe 30 seconds before the explosion. "I will always love you," he said into the growing light. "And I will always be with you," Misun said. Then her voice faded completely and Daehyun was alone in the cockpit. The mech's emergency ejection system fired, blasting Daehyun clear of the explosion. He tumbled through space, watching as the flagship tore itself apart in a bloom of nuclear fire. The other Vrath ships began retreating. Their mission failed, their honor challenged and answered. Rescue ships found Daehyun floating in orbit 3 hours later. By then, the battle was over. The Vrath fleet had withdrawn. The colony had survived. 2 weeks passed before Daehyun was strong enough to leave the hospital. When he finally returned to his workshop, he found Taeyang waiting for him with a small crystal in his hand. "I pulled this from the neural core before everything burned," Taeyang said. "It's a data backup. Her final message to you. She knew she wouldn't survive, so she recorded something. I haven't listened to it. That's for you." Daehyun took the crystal with shaking hands. That night, alone in his workshop, he played it. Misun's voice filled the room. Not synthesized. Not artificial. The real thing, recorded during her neural scan 40 years ago. "Hello, my love. If you are hearing this, then I am gone. But I wanted you to know that I do not regret anything. Not the pain. Not the sacrifice. You gave me a beautiful life, and I am grateful for every moment. I know the war has hurt you. I know you carry ghosts. But please do not let them define you. Live, Daehyun. Plant those cherry trees. Watch them bloom. Find peace, find joy, and know that wherever you are, whatever you do, I am proud of you. I love you, always." Daehyun cried for a long time that night, but they were not tears of despair. They were tears of release, of acceptance, of love that transcended death and time and the cold mathematics of war. The next spring, Daehyun planted cherry trees in his garden. Taeyang helped him, along with Kyungmi and dozens of other colonists who had survived the battle. The trees grew strong and healthy, and when they bloomed, the entire town came to see. In the center of town, they erected a monument, not to war or victory, but to sacrifice and love. The remains of the Mark 7 mech stood silent and still, a reminder of what one old pilot and one impossible AI had done to save them all. And every spring, when the cherry blossoms bloomed, Daehyun would stand beneath the trees and whisper to the wind, "I remember me, son. I will always remember." The old pilot had found peace at last, not in forgetting the past, but in honoring it, not in running from his ghosts, but in letting them guide him toward light. He had fought his last battle. He had kept his promises, and in the quiet moments when the wind blew just right through the cherry trees, he could almost hear her voice, warm and loving and eternal. "Thank you for living," it seemed to say. "Thank you for remembering. Thank you for showing them what humans can do when they fight for love."